Welcome to another episode of Archives and Anchovies, the podcast about whatever it is I want to talk about that week. This week has been quite an interesting week. I recorded an episode last week and I was sick. And so in listening back to it, I started to think about, should I re-record it because now I'm not sick? And listening to it, I had all kinds of small little errors, mispronunciation of words. I just really wasn't happy with the performance that I put on for last week. So had me thinking, why is it that I am so drawn to perfectionism? I know a lot of people are. This is a new podcast for me, so it's something where I'm just starting out and I'm learning how to talk into a microphone, and I'm also learning how to edit things. One of the things last week that being sick and having to go through it and taking coughing breaks and things like that is it did allow me to learn how to edit. But I think that for the most part, I really have not had a lot of experience in listening back to my own voice and knowing whether or not I clearly have described something, or have I really allowed you as the listener to be able to understand exactly what I'm saying. And last week was a perfect example of that. What I thought was a good recording turned it out to be something that maybe wasn't so good. So I still highly recommend you go listen to the episode. It's on Hamilton and Mozart and how they were both geniuses and they both lived at the exact same time, just a long time ago, obviously, but at crucial times in both of their lives, especially Hamilton with the American Revolution. And then, of course, Mozart was composing music and had a very short-lived life. But back to thinking about re-recording that episode, it's something to where I listened to it and it gave me this idea this week to think about, even in all aspects of my life, how I try to have perfect output. It's something to where I do practice all kinds of things. I go through notes pretty scrupulously for this podcast and I look at certain things and I want to make sure that it's something that is entertaining for you. I like to tell jokes. I try to do these in one take. Last week was the first time that I really actually used a script. So that was something that was also fairly new for me. And I don't think it flowed as well. So in learning and progressing and trying to become a better podcaster and give you, the listener, more something interesting to listen to, that's kind of the goal. So this episode wants to really kind of dive into the psychology behind perfectionism. There are certain aspects of my life where I really don't care about things, but there are other things that I care about deeply and I try to be perfect and I try to go through those. And I started trying to figure out, why is that? Why is it that I know what's good for me to eat and that I need to exercise and that the desire to have a perfect body doesn't exist, but yet I can go to a golf course and not play for 3 weeks and expect to be perfect on the golf course. So there's a large psychological aspect to us wanting to be perfect in some things and maybe not in others. So why do we notice these types of things? And probably more common for me is to do something and then notice the small imperfections. If you've listened to before, you know I'm a musician. We actually had the opportunity to go to the symphony and see a fantastic show. It was the symphony about music across Europe and how the influential composers of the days, depending on what was happening at that time in history, how they were able to compose music, whether it was triumphant or it was sad. It really, was an awe-inspiring performance, and it was narrated, and it was just a really fantastic performance. But to my ear, I did not hear a single mistake. So as a listener and somebody that they played, I think, 8 pieces. I think I knew 5 of them really, really well. So I knew what to anticipate. I knew when some of the percussion was coming in, when the brass was coming in, when a lot of the string parts came through. I was anticipating, watching, especially the first chair violinist play, because I knew there was a hard or a fast, or this one piece has this really cool high harmonic piece. And I was like, they had this harmonics in there, and I was really, really excited to see it because it's very interesting to me to see how all of that's played. However, I didn't hear a single mistake. The conductor was conducting great. They were flawless. They were very fluid, and the performers all seemed to play all the right notes. Now, as somebody that performs quite a bit throughout the year on the bass, and I do a lot of live shows, and you have one shot live. It's not a recording like this where I could go back and record things. I typically don't, but I could go back and record things and make it perfect. But there is one shot when you're doing a live performance and you're playing your instrument. So for me to sit there and watch and think that they didn't miss a note is pretty amazing. Now, I know that as the performance side, not as the person in the crowd, there were probably a lot of missed notes. There were probably a lot of missed timings. There was probably people that maybe squeaked at a point, or, an oboe may have missed a wrong note or something of that nature. But everything goes so fast and you're so drawn into the actual performance aspect that you don't even notice it. So what is it, especially about me? I'm going to start by talking about my performance as far as a bass player and a musician, that what we remember are the small imperfections throughout the show. So for me, that could be, yes, I played a wrong note. I played a wrong phrase. It could be that I was on the wrong patch. It could be that I did not engage the audience at a certain time, or it wasn't something where maybe I didn't look as enthused. There's all kinds of things that go through there. And the thing that happens is that we tend to focus on those areas that really are not that big of a deal to the audience member. And I'm talking specifically about this kind of live performance. It goes by in a fleeting moment. And if I'm sitting out in the crowd and I'm watching somebody perform and I think that they performed a great show, I'm just entertained. I'm there to have fun. And I am one of those judgmental musicians. If I know the piece or I know the song, I'm going to sit there. I don't fold my arms and stand at the front of the stage and just stare at you. Yes, that is a real thing. I have had people, and especially guitarists. I don't know what it is about guitarists, but guitarists will have that one person that goes up there. One has to examine all their gear and see what kind of gear they're using. And then in addition to that, they stand there with their arms folded all night and they just stare and they judge every solo they play, every phrase they play, what their guitar sounds like. Bass, not so much because there's not as much soloing going on, but I still do have those people, especially in certain parts of a song. Maybe like if we're playing YYZ by Rush, I know that there's bass players in the audience and they're going to watch me and they're going to see if I can play the solo sections correctly. Used to intimidate me a lot, really doesn't anymore. I've played for so long now. If I make a mistake, I make a mistake. Rush is probably my favorite band, and, they have a lot of mistakes within their music too, but it doesn't detract any of my enjoyment. So gets back to why, as the human that I am, do I go and I obsess over listening to myself play and obsess over those small little mistakes that probably nobody else realizes. So there is definitely a thing with flaws, especially, that is pretty amazing when you look at some of the psychology. And part of it stems from not making the same mistake again. So if I play a song and I'm practicing by myself and it's maybe something I'm learning or something that's coming up for the next show, I sit there and play it and I play it over and over and over. But each time I play it, I'm hoping that I am making some sort of minor improvement. And there are certain songs that I've played in the past that are extremely, extremely difficult. And once you get them, there's a sense of satisfaction. And I think this is a deep-rooted psychological effect of that when we have something and we know something is wrong, there is a dopamine or something that comes in and gives us a reward that says, hey, we went and you played this correct, and now I'm excited for you. And then it makes you want to play it again. And more times than not, the first time that I get something right and I go back to play it again, I'll play it wrong again. And so it starts that cycle all over. So it's extremely important to understand that practice and working through things, there is a natural state and a natural flow of being able to do it correctly and do it well. When I start off playing a song, the first thing that I do is I really just kind of listen to the song. I go through motions and think about just playing, what the bass player is doing. I'll listen to it a couple more times. I'll listen to what the drums are doing, how they're locked in with the bass and certain sections or certain segments of the song. And then I'll start to really roughly sketch out what the chords are. So I'll listen to the song and I'll just kind of try to play the root notes with the bass. And then from that point, I really learn what the song is. But as I get into the more, crucial details of a tune, like how was the style that they played? Was it something that the person that originally played it, did they play it in a certain spot? Did they do something that makes the song original? Or is there a trill or something? The details that are in the song that are going to matter are what I look for next. Each one of the times I play through a song, though, it's something to where I obviously am probably making mistakes at first. And then as I get more comfortable, not only do I fix those mistakes, but I also make the song me. And I think that's one of the critical pieces for all musicians is that even if you're doing cover music or you're doing tribute bands, as I do, you still have to put your own signature, your own style on some of the things. You get as close as you can to what the original artist wanted to portray, but there still has to be part of you to make it believable to the audience. So that's a pretty important piece. When I am doing well on the bass, I do identify, a pretty healthy mindset. So there are certain times where I literally have to put down the guitar because I realize that I'm getting into an unhealthy spot where either I'm starting to get angry, I'm so frustrated it doesn't become fun anymore, which I don't get paid for it for a living. That's not how I pay my mortgage and pay my bills. So it should be something that I should remember as fun. Later on, when I start talking about being perfect in golf, this just goes out the window. I don't know what it is about golf's hold on me, but boy, it's something tragic at times. So, but as far as the bass goes, I sometimes identify with like, can I do it? Is this something that I am going to continue to struggle with? It's really interesting. And it hasn't happened for a long, long time. Generally get nervous before a show. I will psych myself up. We'll sit back and we'll tell jokes. I maybe have a drink behind, closed doors in the green room a couple hours before just to be loosened up. Typically that doesn't bother me, but there are still times in certain songs where I play where I will, that part is coming up and either a solo is coming up or a specific part is coming up that you have to be the shining star or something. That's where I give ultimate credit to guitarists. They're always out in front. They are always out there soloing. Somebody misses a note, you have a sour note, you're out there kind of on your own island. So the bass player, I get to sit back a little bit. I can kind of fake things at times and make things look like I meant to do that. That old adage is if you make a mistake, it's a mistake, but if you make the same mistake twice, it's jazz. That's kind of how I feel about that. I identify, though, sometimes when I'm practicing or when I'm performing, as that is how I value myself. And that's absolutely something that probably is not something that I should do as a bass player. The other thing is that we always feel that we're in control. So I always think that I have practiced enough, that I've performed enough, that I've played enough, that I understand the instrument enough, that I should have control over playing this song. And there are just some times that things are out of your control. A drum could fall over or fall off. You could step on your cord and you forgot to wrap it through your strap so that it won't pull out. There are certain things technical that happen. Your in-ear monitors can go out. All of a sudden your mix changes. There are so many things that happen, especially when I'm in a live performance playing bass, that are out of my control that I just have to trust to happen. So if that happens, I have to remember and I have to rely on the fact that I've played this song a lot of times. I know how to play it, and it's something to where I should feel good about just getting through the performance. There probably has been, oh gosh, maybe 2 or 3 times in the last 15 years where I've done a performance that I just feel like was terrible. And I wanted to hang my head low, and then I'll go talk to somebody in the audience. We do like a meet and greet, and they'll come by and they'll tell you how amazing you were. And, they just love the way you played or things like that. And it's just validation of knowing that, one, I'm not in control of everything. I shouldn't base my self-worth on how I played in a particular moment in a particular spot of time. It's a full catalog, and it's a long history. As they talk to you about like your life, right? Your life is what's in the dash. So you have your birth date and you have your date of death, and your life is really what is in that dash. So that's the thing that's important. So we have this illusion that we have control over everything, and we feel like we should have control. And there is a feeling that, it's needed, and that if we just learn to let go just a little bit, it might help parts during the chaos that we have. So that's one of the things that I've probably been able to do more recently, is to be able to let go and just let things be and work with what I have. This is no more evident than in my recent golf game. So just a little bit of history for my golf. I was a almost scratch golfer back 26 years ago. So 1999, 2000, I actually was good enough to get my player ability test card. So I had my Southwest Section PGA card. Doesn't mean I could have played on the PGA Tour, but my goal at that time was to be a teaching professional, and that was what needed to happen. And basically, I needed to shoot like 74, 75 in a 36 hole in one day tournament. That was kind of the test of it. So I passed that, got the card, realized that there was not a whole lot of money in starting up teaching in golf. And so I, stuck the course in retail. I've talked about that before, so I'm not going to go through it. But the one thing that I still believe in my head for some reason is that I'm still that good. And unfortunately, I am not that good. At that point, I'm a 2, 3, 4 handicap, something in that range, typically shooting around 75, broke par a couple times. And now there's days where I'll shoot 85 and there's days that I'll shoot 97. So it's wildly complex and it's wildly inaccurate to know what I'm going to shoot that day. But I used to get very, very angry on the golf course. And I was listening to John Sherman's podcast, actually. It's called The Sweet Spot. And it was one of the podcasts I just recently listened to. And he had an episode on why we get angry at golf. And I think part of it is this control illusion that we just talked about. And we feel that we know exactly what our body's going to do. The golf swing is so fast and there's so many moving pieces. If you've never played golf, I highly recommend giving it a try if you want to get yourself humbled, especially if you feel like you're a pretty good athlete or something. It definitely takes its physical and mental toll on you over a span of 6, 7 weeks. However, I used to get extremely, extremely angry. I used to throw clubs. I used to break clubs. I would smack my golf bag. I just was a high intensity player. I thought that everything that I did should be perfect. I've done it before. I can visualize the shot. I can see it. I know mechanically. I know how to hit the shot. So why can't I execute that shot? It's probably one of the most frustrating things that you have to deal with as a golfer, especially if you've done it before. How is it that you're sitting next to the green and you have, 15 yards to the hole and it should be a super easy shot. You just hit it 500 yards in a couple of shots and you're sitting right next to the green. And then it takes you 4 shots to get that 15 yards. So it takes you that amount of time and that amount of shots to get very close to the green. And then you just suck. I mean, there's no other way to put it. You just suck. Your mental game goes to heck. And you hit a bad shot, your chip shot goes, 30 feet past, or you blade it, worst of all, and it goes off the green off the other side, or you barely hit it on and then you 3-putt. And all of that other work that you did was great. It is so mentally draining. And that should be the point where you should have the most control. So you're swinging at full speed with a driver, which is the longest club in the bag. You're supposed to hit it, 250 to 300 yards, and you're just wildly swinging at it. Somehow you find the fairway. You hit a good second shot, you're near the green, and then the shortest shots seem to be the worst. Putting should be the easiest thing to do in golf, and it is the most heart-wrenching and frustrating part of any sport I've ever played. I contend that people that say, shooting a free throw, there's no defense happening, it's a 15-foot shot, that's where the free throw line is in basketball, the hoop doesn't move, none of that. But I still contend that if you sit over an 8-foot putt, which the pros only make 50% of, by the way, it is something to where you feel that putt should go in every time. The best player in the world is only hitting that putt 50% of the time, but me, I should be hitting that putt 100% of the time. And I chastise myself and beat myself up when I don't make it. It's very frustrating. However, I think through the last probably 4, 5, 6 rounds that I've played after I've trying to be studying the psychology of golf more and actually having a strategy around the course, I have really developed a better mental attitude on allowing things to happen and just dealing with whatever it is that happens within that shot. And it's kind of like when I play music. Like I said, I don't know, who knows? Maybe the battery dies in my inner monitor system and all of a sudden I can't hear the rest of the band. I have to figure it out awful quick when I'm on stage or else people are going to know. Just like golf, I could hit a great drive and then the second shot, I hit it in the water. So what I've developed recently is really understanding that it's not particularly the current shot that you hit. Sometimes it's the previous shot that you hit that really gets you in the trouble. And so I have developed a system for myself after watching countless YouTube videos and things like that, which again, that goes straight back into the perfectionism thing. How can I fix it? I go to YouTube, I read books, I do those types of things. And why is it that I have to do that? And why is it that I have this need to get back to something that I knew how to do? Maybe it was 25, 26 years ago, but I've really developed a much better course strategy. It's allowed me to be less angry. It's allowed me to be more friendly on the course. I'm sure that if you had been playing with me 6 months ago, my competitors were probably like, I don't know if I really want him to play this week because last week he broke his club or he threw a club in the water or, actually I've never thrown a club in the water, but they're too expensive to do that. At least if you break the shaft, you can just go buy another one and it can get reshafted. That's just a pro tip, as you're golfing and you want to do something to one of your clubs, just don't throw it in the water because you can't retrieve it after that. Just break it. It's a lot easier to fix. Yeah, I don't recommend breaking clubs either. That's not what I'm proposing. But if you have to do something, that's the thing that you should do. But anyway, so by playing competitors, probably playing partners, I won't call them competitors, they probably are much happier with me on the course the way I am now. And it's interesting that I try to fix more things in golf than I try to fix in other aspects. So I do have a job. I do my work. I do consistently try to improve myself in my job and things like that. I definitely try to improve myself for music. I practice, several times a week. I practice my music. I practice other things, scales, new techniques, those types of things. But golf is probably something where I am thinking about it more in a given day than I am about anything else to improve. So whether it's my swing or whether it's the mechanics, or I have gone off on this long, long litany of trying to figure out which golf ball is the best for me. If you listen to that episode about the advancement of the golf ball from the very beginning, I was doing all this research, and one of the things that I found was there's different golf balls for different people, different levels, how they really affect you. And so I've been trying a bunch of different golf balls and doing a lot of different research. So it's one of those things where there is a definite effect when you are able to fix something that is a flaw in whatever it is that you're trying to fix. So it gives you a high. So I recently have not been able to hit my driver. I don't know why. It's one of those frustrating things in golf where one day you'll be hitting something really, really well. The next week, you can't hit that for anything. One of my friends today, he played yesterday. I didn't get a chance to play. And he was telling me that he was slicing his driver 60 yards to the right. And I've played with this person for upwards of 15 years, never hits the ball like that. Typically straight, maybe a little bit to the right, but not like he was. He said basically he hit one fairway the entire day. And that is highly unusual for that person. So it just can happen. And his response, which would have been way better than my response, was just, oh, well, it happens. So I know he'll be back next week. I get to play next week and he'll be able to play. And he'll probably have a great day. He has an off day for some reason when I don't play, but when I play for some reason, he seems to have his really good days. And that's a little bit frustrating for me because I would like to beat somebody at some point in time. I am hyper competitive, but mostly I'm competitive with myself. I just try to get myself better. So the control that we have over those type of activities and the things that we can do to help try to control the situation the best we can is also something that's pretty normal. We think we can just look at information and absorb more information and feel that we are able to have the power over that. One of the things that I probably will succumb to at some point in time is there's only so much information that I can consume. And when I watch, YouTube videos and things like that, the other thing that is pretty prominent in doing some research for this particular podcast is that there's definitely a social media illusion that happens right now. And there are way too many sources of information coming in. If you look at Instagram, Facebook, all the social medias, TikTok, YouTube, most of that, from what I have researched, is really done and, perfected by people doing, multiple takes and things like that. I see some of these trick shots and some of these shots. I watched a video and they were talking even about the PGA Tour. They said, you don't see on Sunday on the national broadcast for the PGA Tour that, they don't show the guy that, shot 82 and had, two balls out of bounds and hit another ball in the water and snapped a club over his knee. They're showing the leaders. They're showing the people that are playing the best. They're showing the greatest shot. So it's an illusion for us to see that, we should be playing that way in a golf tournament. It's the same way on the internet with somebody that's playing music. You see these amazing drummers, or you see something that they're sitting in their living room or their basement or their recording studio or something. You don't know how many takes that that took for them to do that. I've recorded a lot of music over my lifetime. I know most of the time things are not done in one take. I try to do these podcasts in one take. I would say so far, this is episode 5. So I've done 4 episodes. The last episode was the only thing that I haven't done in one take. So far, this has been one take for me. I'll have one little edit here because I did have to take a cough break because I'm not quite over the cold yet from last week, but it's something to where it is an illusion for us to see everything that happens on social media and think that we should be able to do it just like they can and that they don't practice. It's a misnomer because one of the things that I hear all the time is how when I play bass, some people will tell me that I make things look so easy. And it's something to where, you'll get that comment that it's like, well, I wish I could play like you. I wish I could, I wish it came as easy, for me as it came for you or it does for you. And, it's not easy. I sit in my room and I practice and I practice and I practice. I always told my girls when they were growing up that when they went to perform, I always said that, practice and mastery trumps nerves. If you are so well oiled in your practice that the nerves will disappear because you're going to do it well. So it's not a mistake. Look at all of the choreography that happens with all of these dance troupes and ballets and all this pop music that's out there. There is highly choreographed things. They have to practice and practice and practice. Not only that, those dancers, they have to have themselves in tip-top physical shape for the most part to do a show like they do and do it over many nights. If you're doing 70, 80, 100 shows a year and you have to perform at that level all the time, it's difficult. I've known several musicians, several vocalists that can't even, do 2 or 3 nights in a row. And so they have to be in shape to be able to perform 100 concerts a year and to be able to belt out those tunes. So when you see something that's on social media and you see something that is on, YouTube or something of that nature, that's pretty rehearsed for the most part. There are some people that do a lot of things live, and obviously there's, YouTube live and there's other live broadcasts that happen. Obviously they're not going to fake it there, but for the most part, what you're seeing is not something that is, maybe true to life and not somebody that does it the first time. So this thing of control, where I was going with that, sorry for the quick sidebar there, was basically that there's a diminishing return on trying to overstimulate yourself for getting one particular area fixed. So if I was to be playing a technically hard song on the bass guitar, or I should say, actually an easier reference would be golf again. So if I was to talk about golf and say, okay, I have typically range around 35 putts. I want to get that down to 30. Well, I can knock myself out and I can go and practice every day and I can do all these things and try to get myself to 30 putts. If I get to 31 or 32, I've just shaved 3 strokes off of my typical golf score, which for me, that gets me typically into the low 80s instead of the mid 80s. But how much more can I practice and how much more can I do to try to get that from 31 or 32 putts now down to 29 putts? That's a level that I did back in the 1999, 2000, where I would spend all time, doing putting, hitting out of bunkers, practicing all these short game shots. And you really have to have, a lot of dedication to be able to do that. If it's not something that comes natural to you, like putting typically doesn't come too natural to me anymore. I don't know whether that's an age-related issue or if it's just a talent-related issue at this point. I just don't have the ability that I had back then, even though my mind thinks I do. It's something to where I can drive myself crazy by just trying to fix just that particular area of my game, and it's not going to work very well. So I would highly recommend that if there is something that you are looking at and you're trying to improve, that you figure out at what point is there a diminishing return on the effort that you're putting into a particular area? Now, obviously, there's going to be some areas that you do have to master. There are things that I do have mastery over, especially in music. I understand how to read music. I understand key changes. I understand what notes are in a key. I understand my modes. Those are things that you do have to master, like say in a musical performance. But if there's a particular technique maybe that I want to learn how to do, I'll just say like maybe it's something that I want to learn a Primus song and I don't know how to use that technique that he is using, then it's going to be something to where I could burn myself out trying to do that, probably frustrate myself, and it may be something that I'll never use. So I have to decide, okay, is it really worth me learning this particular thing, or can I focus some energy and focus some time on something else that's going to give me better outcome overall. And the thing that I probably struggle with when I look at trying to fix some of these areas is that it does give you anxiety trying to be perfect as well. So how you're perceived and being, trying to be a perfectionist is actually, provides a lot of anxiety. If you can just make you think if you can make it perfect, then I won't have to worry about criticism, failure, or rejection, or anything like that. But I have found that the more you try to perfect something, the more criticism and judgment people have. So Dream Theater is one of my other favorite bands. I rank Rush as one and Dream Theater as 1A. I think I've talked about that before, but I have seen Dream Theater only one time, but I've listened to their music a lot. I can't imagine the anxiety that they have preparing one of their tours. There's so many notes, everything is so fast, everything is so specific. On a live tour, they don't move around a lot, they don't run around a lot. Some of them have music on stage, and so it really is something that where I feel that there's probably some anxiety, at least at the beginning, when they're going to put their programs together, where they have some sort of anxiety regarding the whole performance. Perfectionism doesn't reduce your anxiety. It actually increases it. So if you are trying to get to a specific level that you want to get to, you know that you probably become more anxious the closer you get to that. Those videos that you see on YouTube, for example, and they're pretty cool. Like somebody wants to bounce like a cup off of a refrigerator and then off a pot, and then they hit their cat, and then the cat takes it and they put it in a cup. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up, but you probably can visualize one that you've seen where somebody's trying to do that. Well, as it counts up the amount of times they do it, how frustrating do you think that was for them? How many times do you think they went over it? We see a counter that maybe goes up 1 to like 30 tries or something like that. We don't even know if that was was it 30 takes? Was it 100 takes? Was it 1,000 takes? Do you think their anxiety as they're trying to become more and more perfect and they got closer and closer, do you think their anxiety went up more or did it reduce? So if you're throwing that little ball and you're trying to get it in the cup and it barely misses and it goes off the rim, you should, as a thought, realize, okay, that was super close. There's no reason that this one should be any closer. But your brain tells you, yeah, I'm going to do it right this time because I can make this slight little adjustment and I now have the control and I'm going to be perfect and I'm going to throw it exactly where I want. That's typically not the case. So perfectionism and trying to make something perfect really does add to your anxiety. Tiny, obsessive details, these become a way to channel anxiety into something that's tangible. So if you look at all these little details, especially like in a musical performance or in your golf swing, I could go on for probably another 30 minutes on the tangibles in a golf swing, where your wrist position is, where you are at the top, where the ball position is, how your feet are put, what's the wind doing, what's the lie like, what's the grass like, is it upslope, is it a downslope? There are just so many factors, especially in a golf swing. All those things become super tangible to you right at that moment. So if you step up to up to your golf ball in the fairway, you assess all these things in a matter of seconds, but it all then starts to play in your mind. And I'm doing the little like spinning around wheel, and you can't see it because I only do audio podcasts at this point, but I'm doing that little thing like I'm crazy. It does drive me crazy. So you think about all that stuff in a couple of minutes, and then it starts to come into your mind, and some of it creeps into your mind saying, I don't remember how to hit this shot. I don't remember if I'm supposed to choke up on the club, if I'm supposed to choke down on the club, if it's an uphill lie, if it's a downhill lie, if it's a side hill lie. All of that happens within just a couple of seconds. And what it does is it adds tension, adds anxiety, and most likely will lead to you not performing your best. So it's really an important fact to realize that, hey, you are not in control of everything. As far as YouTube and social media, a lot of that is not something that's going to be perfect on the first take. Like I said, I've tried to do these podcasts in one take. You can hear me probably breathing hard or doing something. I've bumped the table a couple of times. I'm trying not to. I talk with my hands. Again, you can't see it, but I do talk with my hands. So it is something where I'm trying to not bump the table, but you may hear it. The Critical piece of all of this is what's the cost to this? It could be your mental health. It could, in some cases, be your physical health. If you are trying to do something at work and you're trying to do something, perfect, the expectation is the next time that you get asked to do that task or similar task, it's going to be perfect. There is a quarterly meeting that I run at work. It's in front of a large group of people. Every time I have it, I still find errors and it still frustrates me. I've done this now, I don't know how many times, probably a dozen, maybe 15 times. So 15 quarters. So it is something to where it's never going to be perfect. But every time I feel that any error that I make on that is something that is going to be just, magnified by the people that are viewing it. So it costs us all kinds of stuff. So your time obviously is one of the biggest things. So as we talked about what the diminishing returns are, if you continue to try to be perfect at something, you're probably putting off something else that might give you more enjoyment, you might be a little better at, et cetera. In addition to that, you definitely reduce your creativity. So if you are looking at, how I play the guitar, for instance, I know I keep going back and forth, but that's just how my brain works. If I'm looking at the guitar and I'm obsessing over playing a particular part, sometimes I forget the joy that I have just being able to play guitar, play bass. And it's such an unusual of, anxiety for me when I'm playing an instrument. I could play all day. If I could have done it for a living, I probably could have done it for a living. There was just sacrifices that I was not willing to make at that point in time. So we all make our choices. And I love how my life turned out. So I'm not complaining whatsoever. But as where I'm at now, if I spend way too much time playing the bass, obsessing over specifics that really are not going to have that great of return, then I'm really kind of fooling myself. It also can definitely affect the relationships that I have with either other members of the band, my spouse, or friends or anything. Because if you are trying to be such a perfectionist in something or anywhere, it can drive anxiety, it can drive division. My spouse knows when I'm not happy, and it could have nothing to do with anybody in our family, anything like that. It's probably because, truth be told, it's probably because I'm obsessing over something in golf. There was a point, really the turning point was for me in the golf. This is total sidebar again, is probably 3 months ago. I came home and I was pretty distraught and I was upset. And my wife asked me, why are you even doing this? You always come home. You don't sound like you have any fun. And what is it? And that really, I started digging into the psychology at that point. Like, why do I get so upset? Why does this affect the rest of my day? I play golf. I start at 10 o'clock. I'm done by 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I obsess over it for the next 8 hours. Typically the next day I'm okay, but then it comes back into where I start then wanting to perfect the things that I have tried to do. So where I was having errors. So it's a very, very difficult thing to do, but it can definitely affect relationships. So I now see it from her side of things. If I'm seeing it on her side, I want to try to help. And there might not be anything that that person could do, or it might not be anything that I could do to help that person at that time. So trying to be perfect and trying to make it to where it's you're making vast improvements on something can really have its toll, not just on your own mind, your time, but also your relationships. It's really interesting because as a person that really is doing multiple things, there's one of my quotes is most people have heard the first part of it, which is a jack of all trades, master of none. The Shakespeare quote, of course, is jack of all trades, but master of none. But then the rest of the quote is actually, but oftentimes better than a master of one. So that's basically saying that somebody that is doing all kinds of things might be a little bit better for a particular instance than somebody that just has a specific skill. So, look at it from like a doctor. If there's a doctor that's a neurosurgeon, that person might be the best neurosurgeon as ever lived. But let's say you have a dislocated ankle, they may not be too helpful. You may have your general practitioner or, sports medicine that would be a better fit for that versus somebody that does neurosurgery. That's just a weird example. I don't know why that just came to my head, but that's what I came up with. So the interesting thing about perfectionism and wanting to Be Perfect really kind of started with me this week because of last week's podcast episode, as I just mispronounced another word. I can't believe I mispronounced podcast, but hopefully you don't hold that against me. At least you know that it's probably a real thing that I'm doing here, and this is not an AI voice. So when I looked at that podcast, I really was debating on whether or not to redo it. So I definitely, if you have listened to that podcast, if you think that I should redo it, let me know. Let me know in some comments. I'd be happy to read those and give you give you a reply. But at this point, I don't think my intent is to redo that podcast. I think it's just going to be something that's a learning lesson and I get to move on from. And I hopefully have learned, one of the things that I've learned is maybe they have a couple of these recorded. So if I do get sick or I'm unable to record one for that week, that I have one to plug in there. But the thing that is probably the most impactful for thinking about that is for where I'm at currently. If I look at an overall skill level, is that podcast is good enough. It taught me a lot of things. I learned a lot of things about the editing. I learned about scripts. I learned about having information at my fingertips. If you do listen to that podcast, there's a couple times where you may not be able to hear it, but I can hear it, where I can actually hear myself turn the page because I didn't have it digitally. And it's one of the things that for now, I think that this is going to be good enough. If you are somebody that has to obsess over work that is going to be, an A or an A plus all the time, maybe it's something to where if you are a little weaker in something, like I'm newer to podcasting. So, a B or a B plus is still passing. For me, that episode might be, a high C plus or a B minus because I had some struggles, or it's something where maybe I learned, hey, you don't have to be perfect. I've gotten a couple of instances and messages that people like that episode, even regardless of the fact that I know there were flaws. There was so much stuff I wanted to talk about, but I just could not stomach through any more of it. So maybe there's a part two. And that's another good learning lesson, is that just because you did something once doesn't mean that you can't revisit it. Maybe it's my 100th episode and it's Hamilton and Mozart revisited. I don't know. But the thing is that I have come to a place where this is something that's fun for me. I really enjoy it. I am learning how to do it. And I don't expect to be ever perfect at it. I don't know if there's ever somebody that has been a perfect podcaster in life, but it is something that is probably not that's going to be attainable. One of the things that I will say as far as podcasting goes, when I started this podcast, I just started sharing it with my friends. I did watch a YouTube video because I have been watching YouTube videos on, how do I do some things better, or what are some, pitfalls to avoid and things like that. And one of them, which I fell right into, was you start it up and then you don't share it with anybody. So nobody knows you're doing it. And even if, it's early on and it's not the greatest work out there, you're still doing it. And what has been very interesting to me for this podcast, and what one of my good friends, who I hope to be having on the show as my first guest ever in a few episodes, he said to me, I have 8 or 9 friends that have told me that they want to start a podcast, and you're the first one that actually ever has. And now, as I'm starting to share these with my friends, people are telling me, oh, I've been wanting to do one for a year. Oh, I've thought about this for 6 months. Oh yeah, I really want to do one of these. And I think the critical piece is that, and going back to that Shakespeare quote, is that it just needs to be done. Anything that we put out there and we get to learn from and we get to put together, it just has to be done. It doesn't have to be perfect. If I was going for perfection, I would be obsessing over all the little pops that might happen or the bumps in the table. And do I really want to overdub and re-record things? I don't think that that's an organic experience that if I gain a following of listeners, which again, this is just something fun for me to do. And, this sounds kind of morbid, but, maybe 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, I'm no longer around and my kids, their grandkids, not their grandkids, but my grandkids, they might be able to actually hear, hey, this is what dad sounded like. This is what dad was thinking. Here's some crazy thoughts that he had. What's the deal with anchovies? Why was he so obsessed with them? Who knows? But it needs to get done. So if you are on the fence about something, or you don't know if you should do something, the answer is, if it's something that's going to make a positive impact in your life and you want to be, better at something, then you just have to do it and you have to work through that struggle. Just like my golf game, just like music, This podcast is probably going to be liberating for me in a couple of different ways. And I think that it's going to be something that I'm going to fully enjoy for a long time. Uh, you know, I think the struggle is for me and for a lot of people with wanting to be perfect, and the thing for perfectionism is that it really comes down to, your self-worth. You are, just enough as you are. Exactly as you are, details and all. The imperfections that I have are admired by other people. The perfectionist in me wants to fix those, but I tell strange jokes and I'm a little off color sometimes. And there are people that appreciate that about me. And there's people that love that about me. So I'll keep doing it. As far as performer, I make things easy. I make things look easy because I practice my tail off and I work really hard on it. I don't have to be perfect. Most shows, there are several times that I'm not perfect, and that's okay because the people that really are caring about me and know that, it's something that I did the best I could, and it was definitely good enough. So I appreciate everyone listening. I did actually just start an Instagram page for this podcast. It is Archives and Anchovies. You are more than welcome to message me directly if you'd like to. As I am learning different things, hopefully I will be available on other platforms. YouTube is the next thing that I'm going to tackle. So hopefully in the next few weeks, I figure out how to do video and get that going. Most people said video is the way to do things now. So I'm probably better heard than seen, but we'll see how that goes. But I appreciate your time. I hope that everybody has a great day, and I appreciate you all listening. Have a great day. Bye-bye.